In 1994, journalist Dan Baum sat down with John Ehrlichman, Richard Nixon's domestic policy chief, to ask about the war on drugs. What Ehrlichman said next would not reach the public for 22 years. Baum described him as speaking with the bluntness of a man who, after public disgrace and a stretch in federal prison, had little left to protect. And Ehrlichman said this: "Every word is from the public record." The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies: the anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Let that land. The man who built the war on drugs, the policy that has driven more than 31 million arrests since 1971, according to FBI Uniform Crime Report data, and that pushed the United States to hold more of its own people in prison than any other nation on earth, that man sat down with a journalist and described it as a deliberate political weapon, designed to criminalize communities the White House considered enemies, built on associations they fabricated and knew were false. The United States has at times held nearly 25% of the world's entire prison population, despite having 5% of its people. That figure has shifted over the years as incarceration has declined somewhat from its peak, but the scale remains staggering, and the policy Ehrlichman described is a documented part of how it was built. Baum published the full account in the April 2016 cover story for Harper's Magazine, titled "Legalize It All." He said he believed Ehrlichman was telling the truth. He described it as atonement from a man who had nothing left to protect. Ehrlichman had died in 1999. He served 18 months in federal prison for Watergate-related crimes. He was never charged for what he had just described. Nixon was pardoned by President Ford on September 8, 1974, before he could be prosecuted for anything. The policy Nixon and Ehrlichman designed continued without them. Mandatory minimum sentencing laws for drug offenses were passed in the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970. They were significantly expanded by the Anti-Drug Abuse Acts of 1986 and 1988. The 1994 Crime Bill expanded them further. Each expansion increased the number of Americans, disproportionately Black Americans, serving mandatory prison terms for nonviolent drug offenses with no ability for a judge to consider individual circumstances. According to the American Civil Liberties Union's 2020 report, Black Americans are 3.73 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than white Americans, despite studies consistently showing similar usage rates across racial groups. Marijuana is now legal for recreational use in 24 states and Washington, D.C. as of 2026. There are people in federal prison right now serving mandatory sentences for marijuana offenses that are no longer crimes in the state next door. Federal law has not changed. The Controlled Substances Act of 1970, the same law from the same administration Ehrlichman described, still classifies marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance with no accepted medical use. The people who designed the policy are dead or pardoned. The people the policy was designed to destroy are still living the consequences. The Ehrlichman quote was published in Harper's Magazine, April 2016, confirmed by CNN, The Huffington Post, and the journalist Dan Baum who conducted the original interview. The arrest statistics are from FBI Uniform Crime Reports. The marijuana disparity figures are from the ACLU's 2020 report, A Tale of Two Countries. The marijuana legalization count is current as of 2026. All sources are pinned in comments. Nixon's domestic policy chief admitted it, not implied it, not hinted at it, admitted it in his own words to a journalist on record. That the war on drugs was not about drugs, that they knew they were lying, that it was designed deliberately as a weapon. And the full documented account has been sitting in public record since 2016. This is not a theory. This is not an opinion. This is a named official, a published interview in Harper's Magazine, confirmed by CNN, confirmed by the journalist who sat across from him. No narration was added, no interpretation was inserted, just the record. What he said, and what was built from it, and who is still living inside it, is on my page. Every source listed, every claim verified. Draw your own conclusions, but hear it first. Because these are not history lessons. These are the policies deciding what happens to you right now. What happens to your kids? What happens to your parents? What determines whether you go home tonight or whether someone else decides you don't? It does not matter if you are 15 or 75. If you live in this country, this affects you. Follow Chronicle Zero, not for opinions, for the record, the one they were counting on you never reading.